Welcome back to the Pack Fresh podcast, where we talk about all things Pokemon TCG and give you a little peek behind the curtain about what it's like to be a seller in this crazy hobby. And today we have a pretty cool episode. We're going to be talking exactly about that. The best way to sell Pokemon cards in 2025.
Sellers have so many options. It's changed very drastically over the last 10 years as opposed to what you had available for options back then. Let's start off. We're going to talk a little bit about what's changed even from 2020 till now. There's a lot more online apps such as Alt, Whatnot. Some of these were around back in 2020, but they were in their infancy stages. Whatnot started out as purely a Funko platform and then has grown into other categories since then. Alt came around and then not only gave you a way to look up your graded card value, but also a marketplace to be able to sell those cards. Other online apps such as Rare Candy or Drip.
There's a million different ways now, right? I mean, like pretty much anybody that has a phone or access to the internet, you can sell cards. And it can be really intimidating. If you're a hobbyist and you just are ripping a ton of packs and you're like, okay, I spent a little bit too much this week. I need to get rid of some of these cards that I don't really like. Where's the best place to go? Is it eBay? eBay's the longest running selling platform, right, out there on the internet. Is that the best? Is that just the most accessible, or not even that, just the most known? Where should you go? So I think it's a tough question. What do you think about eBay right now? Is that a good spot to go for somebody?
I feel like personally, eBay's always been a pretty great marketplace. They have a huge customer base. You always can get stuff sold. I think one of the biggest things is going to be fees.
Yes.
So let's break down the different marketplaces by fees, right?
Sure.
So let's say 0% fees. You would either have to sell them
in person,
Facebook, Instagram posts, and you'd have to have followers or be in groups that have people that are looking for these types of cards. Besides being in person, you open yourself up to scammers, right? Or there's a lot of different things that an amateur seller doesn't know to look for that somebody that does this every day can pick right off the top.
For sure.
So then you get into the other side of things where there's seller platforms that have guarantees, like seller guarantees. These fees are going to range anywhere between 6 and 15% typically. And so that's going to be quite a big chunk of your sale. So it's obviously, if you're selling if you're selling cards, if it's one or two, it gives you a different vibe on something that takes a lot of work, takes a lot of time to post these cards. So it really depends as a seller what you're looking to do. Are you looking to get at them as fast as possible, get back the cash, and then you can buy some more stuff? Are you looking to maximize how much you can get for each card? These questions are definitely something you have to ask yourself when you're looking at where you want to post these cards. Also, is knowing that you're protected in selling this card a higher priority for you, because then you're going to pay a little bit more in fees, but you're also going to be barring any scams to take place where they can just take the cards and you end up with nothing. Obviously, in-person sales, selling to a card shop, it's going to be your best bet. If you set up at a local card show, it's usually pretty cheap. I would say like the one-day shows, you're usually finding tables anywhere from $20 to $100, something like that.
Yeah.
So depending on how many cards you have to sell, you can set up. Obviously, most people don't sell out, but you can set up at the table and sell some of your cards at whatever you negotiate with a buyer that's coming across. Otherwise, you can go to a show, sell to a vendor. Obviously, you're going to take a lesser percentage because they're going to have to go through and sell all the cards for you then. Or into a card shop, it's going to be the same thing. And a lot of people are just looking for the most money they can get. Those are not going to be the methods that get you the most money because they take on all the risk. They take on all the risk of that card sliding in value. They take on the risk of that card popularity just completely doing a 180. We just saw that with all of those IRs were booming through the roof and literally felt like someone turned off a light switch.
Yeah.
And those cards wouldn't move. And the prices dropped 50%, 60%. So you really take on a lot of risk. And as a seller trying to get rid of that many cards, you're just taking a lump sum of cash. They have to do all the work, use their networks, post the cards on their platforms to sell, pay those fees, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. I think like at the end of the day, when people are coming and they're going to watch this podcast or listen to it and they're like, okay, I got these cards. I want to sell them. What's the best way? I think the question you got to ask yourself if you're in that position is, you want to start a business out of this? Or is this just, I want to just get out of some of these cards to make some quick cash? Or is it somewhere in between? I think if you're starting a business, by all means, set up a card show, see how you like it. It is very fun to vend. But if you're just trying to get rid of a couple of cards and you don't like dealing with people in person, like Facebook Marketplace, probably out of the picture then, eBay is not a bad option. You're going to get slammed with a bunch of fees, 15% fees or something like that, but you're pretty well protected on there. Like you probably have the highest likelihood of actually selling the card on there because the buyer base is so large. And getting on an app like Whatnot and just like thinking, I'm going to start up a stream, sell some cards, might sell a few, but it can be tough. Then you have to deal with all the shipping and all this extra stuff. So it really depends on how much work you want to put into it. I've never sold on there, but I think you have. There's TCG Player, which is what everybody uses to price cards. You can sell on there. Anybody can sell on there.
Anyone can sell on there, yeah. And biggest pros and cons of using TCG Player, they are one of the highest fees in the marketplaces. They are owned by eBay, but that purchase was only within the last few years, so they're not like fully integrated. They don't have the same systems or anything in place. So they're using still mostly TCG Player terms of service. They've changed certain things over the years, but there's no synergy between the two really. So you're paying the most fees. It does take quite a few days to get paid. It's 7 to 10 days after you ship the product before you see the money. So that's a downfall as well. I think TCG Player, if you're just selling a few cards, is not really the place to go.
Yeah.
But if you were getting a bunch of cards and you just wanted a consistent way to always turn over cards, we definitely have sold thousands and thousands of cards on TCG Player. I think for me personally, where you're going to sell cards depends on the value of the cards you're selling.
That's true.
Are they graded or are they not graded? It just depends. Even if they're graded, are they worth $10? Are they worth $5,000? Same if they're raw, are they worth $1 or are they worth $500? That kind of depends, especially if you're going to post stuff on eBay. I think eBay would be the easiest. You can just run a 7-day auction on everything. Pretty much everything will automatically sell. People can bid it up. They go to wherever they think the market is or wherever the bidders get at the end of the time. And if you had a bunch of cards to sell, there's even stores like ours where you can come in, set up a consignment account. All the cards are listed, sold for you. You pay a fee to have the cards listed, but then the fee structure at the end is about the same as if you were selling on eBay yourself. And you do none of the work, so you just basically drop off your cards, mail your cards in, and then collect a check. And even if you're selling personally on eBay, people cannot pay for the product, then you have to rerun it, you're stuck with it. That happens quite a bit, actually. I know they're trying to fix that. A lot of the times they're doing like beta, where if you bid on an item now, you have to put a credit card on file. So that way when the auction ends, if you win, it automatically charges your card. They do have some holdups with that, saying that the shipping for combined shipping is an issue, but I know they have some updates that'll be coming out here hopefully in the near future that should fix that problem. Besides just paying fees on all of these platforms, the return policies are also a deal breaker on some, and a lot of them you can set it to no returns, but then people always still have a loophole saying they didn't get what was described or the package never showed up to their house, if they have seller's remorse or buyer's remorse or whatever it may be. It's interesting with the landscape of all of the different options to sell your cards, what you're going to choose. And a lot of that, like I said, depends on what you have for sale. Like you just said, how much do you have for sale? Is it just a few cards you just want to get out of it? Is this something you want to do? Setting up a table at a weekend show is a great time. You get to know a lot of other collectors that way. It's a lot of fun. It's also a lot of work, right? How do you want to go about it? Do you want to be interacting with more people? You want to be hands off, everything just sells and you collect some fees, or you sell it to a shop and you walk out with some cash? It just depends. I think if you choose to sell at a card show or a card shop, there's a lot of things you have to take into account as far as what we talked a little bit about, card sliding in value. Obviously, shops, people who set up at a bunch of shows have a lot more overhead for the rent or the tables and all the different stuff and traveling expenses for the shows, and obviously all the expenses that come with a business. You'll see a lot, probably lower rates on lower end trade-ins at this option, but it's pretty much always guaranteed. These guys, these places will always take your cards as long as it's something that's sellable. Nobody wants bulk, right? I mean, there is people who buy bulk. Yeah.
Yeah.
There is places that buy bulk. They use it for a different reason. If you're trying to sell individual cards, it has to be something that has a little bit of value. So 0 fees. We talked Facebook, Instagram.
Yep.
We didn't mention Discord, but there's a lot of servers. I know,
that's true.
Ryan's Card House has a giant server. A lot of even smaller servers have
Buying and
buy,
selling
sell,
and
trade. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
and then Facebook groups and stuff like that. There's a lot of local communities. You can find trade nights that you can get out of some cards. And I think if you're a hobbyist, that's probably really your best bet, right? Throw a couple of cards up on eBay. I think there's also the question, how much value is the card that you are selling? Because if you have $15, $25 cards, I don't know if it's really worth putting all the effort to taking the photos and making the listings and all of that stuff, unless you really want to. I don't know if it's like super worth it to go through all of the work on eBay to then get eaten up by fees at the end as well. And who knows if they sell or not. Finding somebody on Facebook Marketplace or group or something, that's probably your best bet for stuff like that. But if you have a slab or you have a bunch of slabs that you're like, oh, I just got 10 cards back from GameStop through PSA, and what do I do with these now? That's like a big thing right now. There's so many people grading cards because it's so easy now with GameStop and all these different outlets. Tag is becoming a player and all these things. People have a ton of graded cards. What do you do with them? How do you move them? You
And I
know,
think
and
that kind of opens you up a little bit too, right? Because now if you start getting graded cards, PSA specifically,
yep.
you open yourself up to a new avenue, which would be like repackers. And you can sell graded cards to repackers. It opens you up at a little bit higher of a percentage, and they're going to take a lot more cards from you as well.
How would you find somebody like that?
So the best way I would say to find a company that's repacking would be at the larger conventions like Collecticon, Dallas Card Show, Front Row. They're going to have a lot bigger companies there. They'll typically have signs up saying that they're buying, and they're either buying for a repacker or they're repackers themselves. They'll usually take quite a bit of graded cards, almost like unlimited.
Yeah.
Depending on what you have. Obviously, they don't want your PSA 4 V card from Chilling Reign. But
Yeah.
if you have cards that have value, you can definitely move quite a few cards very fast at a higher percentage than, say,
And a lot
they're
of
not
times
graded.
that's the percentage that they'll buy at is even higher than what you could get selling on eBay after fees. And I think that's something that I see a lot of online is vendor POV videos are super popular. And you see a lot of comments on there of people like, why would I sell it 80% to this person or 75% or 70% when I could just sell it for 100%? Okay, you could, but like we've been talking about, there's really only a few ways you're getting 100%. And even then, everybody wants a deal, right? So it's like you have a card, say it's worth $100. You post that on Facebook Marketplace. Somebody's going to message you and be like, I'll give you 90 for it.
Yeah.
And you're like, maybe,
Yeah.
you know, there's 90% right there, right? Or you're on eBay, cards worth $100. You have it buy it now $100. Even if somebody buys it at $100, you already got 15% fees right off the top.
And depending how you set up shipping, another $5 in shipping.
Right. If you did free shipping, so you're already then you're 80%. At $80. You're at 80%. I think that's kind of the thought process that a lot of people need to consider too, where it's okay, maybe I'll just sell it to this vendor at 70%. I get out of all of these cards, or maybe they have something you like, right? Even better, you're trading it into them at 80%. That's pretty sweet. Obviously, this episode is about selling, getting out of a bunch of cards. If it's a bunch of stuff you just want to move quick, 75% doesn't sound too bad now. And you get out of it instantly.
And it's guaranteed you're done. You don't have to worry about
returns or
the post office losing your package, returns, credit card disputes. You don't have to worry about a customer saying that you sent them the wrong card when you know you sent the right. There's 100 different scams that can happen as a seller, and you take minus your percentage, you're basically giving that discount to not have a headache. You're done. Now you take that money, you can buy more product, you can buy something different. It just depends where you want to end up, right? I think there'd be like 3 tiers. There'd be just the people who just want to get out of stuff. You're going to take a lesser percentage, you're going to be done. Then there's going to be the intermediate there where it's okay, you want to get a little bit higher percentage, you want to do a little bit more work, but you don't want to fully commit to posting or setting up at shows with all of these cards. So you find somebody at a little bit higher percentage to take these, say like on a Facebook group or something like that. Then there'd be like fully get yourself involved. You're setting up at shows, you're selling all these cards. You're going to get the highest percentage. You're also putting a bunch of time into that. So it's kind of like, where do you want to fit into that? And if you got a bunch of free time, it is definitely a lot of fun to set up, vend, sell cards, run auctions, ship all these cards out. It's a mini business that you can start out of nothing and just build it up from there.
Now, I think we've covered a good amount of the person who just wants to get rid of a couple of cards or get out of some cards. Now, say somebody's listening to this and it sounds really fun to vend, right? That sounds, I might be into that. What kind of startup costs, or what does somebody need, like the bare minimum, to start vending at like a local show? And how do they find those local shows? Because a lot of people I talk to are like, how do you know about all these shows? We don't have those here, but you probably do.
Yeah. I think there's card shows in basically every state at this point.
Yeah.
Depending on where you live, it might be in the bigger cities, like especially around me. I'm driving about an hour to the closest card show, but there's some sort of little card show probably once a month in Minnesota. So you can find at least one, typically probably 2 weekends a month. And as far as the setup costs go, you're really only paying that table fee. Like I said, you can find some of the smaller shows like $20 a table to $100 a table for a one-day show. If you're setting up at a multi-day show, you might be looking more between $100 and $500 a table, depending on the show, the size, the amount of people that attend. Outside of that, to get started, the bigger shows typically bring in a company like Zion that's going to have cases for rent on the table, so you can protect your inventory from theft, which is another downfall we haven't really talked about yet, but that's been increasingly getting worse. More and more theft at the card shows, so it's something you definitely want to have, some kind of a lockable device. They make jewelry cases. A lot of people use like the bulletin boards with the felt on the back. Anything that's a case that you can close and then you can kind of watch your cards. You can find them anywhere from $40, $50 to $150 per case. You could literally buy one of those, buy a table fee at a small show, and you're starting for less than a couple $100. Go from there. You don't really need anything outside of that. So minimal cost to get in. The other thing you have to look at is, how much inventory do you have to sell? Say everything you're bringing, if you sell it all, how much money could you make? So if you bring $500 in inventory and say you sell out of everything, you're going to get $500. but the table was $200.
Right.
Does that make sense? Even if you sell out, you paid $200.
Plus, if this is your first show, plus the case, you're making like $150.
Yeah. And if you break it down, that's 40% fees.
Right.
Even if you pay $100 for the table, that's 20% fees. Does that make sense? You could have just took 75% and sold it 75 and sold them all. And that's if you sell out.
But then it's like, where do you go from there?
Yeah.
Right. So you go, all right, I had one show. This is awesome. I sold out. I got $500 in my pocket now. What now?
Now what do I do? Yeah.
You know, are you ripping packs, $500 worth of packs to get more inventory? You could.
Buy and sell singles.
Yeah. Or are you going buying out some tables, buying some more singles, refilling that stock? At that point, if you're setting up at shows, you at least have some idea of this could be a pretty cool little side hustle. So at that point, maybe you're on the flip side. Maybe you're looking to buy. You're not selling anymore. You're doing both. You're on Facebook Marketplace. You got some listings up, but you're also, people hit you up to buy stuff. You're like, hey, you got anything that you're selling?
And then also at the card shows, typically, especially the multi-day shows, you have the trade nights.
Yep.
Trade nights are big. It's a lot of people that don't have tables that set up like a second mini card show within a card show. And there's a lot of deals to be made at trade night as well.
True.
There's so many options. It could be overwhelming for some. You really have to just keep pivoting on everything. You have to decide which one of these methods is right for me. What kind of inventory do I have? How should I move it? And this could change.
Yeah.
Because you sell out of that inventory, then your next batch of inventory, you might have to just re-strategize your whole plan. So it's really just depends how you want to carve out what you're doing. You could just refill the inventory with the same type of inventory you had before because what you did worked for you. And some people do that. Some people only deal in graded cards. Some people only deal in vintage. Some people deal only in new, modern, raw singles. It just really depends what you want to do, what your niche is, where you have outlets to sell these things.
Yep.
And then you can go from there. It does add up fast.
It does.
You can start ripping packs, and man, can you build up some cards quick.
Yeah, it's true.
And then you're just stuck with a bunch of cards. If you're a collector, hopefully you've already pulled some of the cards you were collecting, or if you're making a master set, which a lot of people do, you're going to have this master set completed. You're going to have a lot of duplicates by the time you do. It's where is your inventory coming from in the first place? That's a big thing too. Are you opening repacks? Because then you're going to end up probably with higher end cards at that point anyways.
Now, looking ahead, what's the landscape looking like of online selling? In card shows, I think it's pretty safe to say that those are getting pretty popular. And we're getting to a point where a lot of places we're having card shows every weekend. And then things like Collecticon, every year there's more and more Collecticons in more and more cities. Started smaller in Dallas area, and then we've expanded. Now we have shows in California. We got shows in Florida and New Jersey this year. You know, I think it's pretty safe to say that should continue to expand. But online selling, I think that they're trying to make it as easy as possible. So you can just instantly set up. Whatnot has their Whatnot card show every several months. I think there's some work it needs to be done, but the idea there is interesting, right? And if you can get enough buyers, anybody
can online card show, yeah.
Anybody with a camera, you don't need to worry about theft. You don't need to worry about any of that. You can set up a booth basically at home.
Yeah, and you got to think of a lot of these other companies, even like Rare Candy.
Mm-hmm.
They mostly do sealed product, but they also do graded cards.
Uh-huh.
But if you look, they added a feature. I don't know when they added this, but it's kind of like Pokélector, where you can put in the cards that you have.
Yeah.
And if there's a card you look up, it has basically every card from every set.
Right.
And if there's a card you're looking for, it gives you links just to click to be able to buy it somewhere.
It's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. So eventually they're going to have raw cards available there.
Right.
And then people will be able to list that card, and then you'll just be able to click buy it right from there. So
no, and that's, can you make your own kind of like storefront almost? Like you basically upload your things and then it's like your profile.
Yep. They're not like TCG Player just has the item.
Right.
And then all of them that are for sale, the different sellers are listed. It's cluttery. It's hard to do. Rare Candy, you make all your own items.
Right.
They're in your store. And then if you're the lowest price in the marketplace, your product gets featured on the main page.
Kind of cool.
That is cool. So if you have the lowest price, you'll see a lot more impressions from potential customers that you wouldn't get if you're pricing a little bit higher, which creates kind of a seller's low price.
Well, it's a good way to get traffic to your little storefront, like to your profile, because that's like the biggest holdup. If you don't have an eBay or a TCG Player where people are searching for the item that they want first, and then they see all of the listings, something like that, it helps get people to your storefront, which then they can see the other items that you have as well pretty easily. And maybe they make a purchase through that. I could definitely see that becoming more and more popular as time goes on.
Yeah.
Because then it's almost like social media. This is my collection. Check it out. And then, oh, I also have these for sale. These ones are for sale. These ones are for trade. And then you have a website like Rare Candy is the facilitator to just get the people who want those cards over to your profile.
Yeah. How cool would an online card show actually be, though? If you just had to have a camera on your case and you can go to a website and there's just a bunch of vendors, you can click on it, see their case, and they're just sitting there and you can just say, oh, the future of online shopping, it's just starting. It's just starting to grow. Even like the largest sellers like Amazon or Walmart that do online shopping. Walmart just announced, I saw they're going to be doing sports breaks now.
Right.
So it's always evolving. That's so new that we have definitely disrupted in-store shopping. It's way less in-store shopping like we were talking about a few episodes ago, like grocery shopping. People order their groceries to pick them up. These types of processes and how we buy stuff online is only going to continue to get better, innovate, become faster and easier to use, and they'll figure out more and more processes to get rid of the scammy type people that are in here with bad faith and kind of cover the innocent party of that, which unfortunately with all this, you see it all the time. There's just so many companies that's their only goal. It's just to scam as many people out of as much money as they can, and that's how they make their money. So unfortunate that we have to have that. And then like we were talking about as well, the theft from in-person shows keeps rising. The theft from shops keeps rising, break-ins. As we see this industry continue to grow in size, we're going to attract more negative attention from people like that, which is unfortunate, but it's just how it works.
Yep.
We touched a little bit on Discord. I think Discord became very popular during COVID when a bunch of companies were using something like Zoom or Google Meet, and their bill was through the roof to do this.
Right.
And you could start a Discord server with all your employees for free. Changed the game, gained a lot of popularity during that time, and now it's become a business tool that I think is still basically untapped potential for the majority of businesses out there.
For sure.
And our Discord should be done here in the next week or two, hopefully. We're just finalizing a few things, and then you'll see the link in our link tree that we post in the videos. Definitely make sure you check it out. We got a lot of cool stuff coming in there. But buyer seller marketplace is a place where you can find like-minded people that like either the same Pokemon you do, or outside of Pokemon, the same video games you do, or the same streamer that you like. And there's like communities for everything on there, and it's just a super great place that I think will continue to grow. And I wouldn't be surprised if you see like shops and things like that are attached to Discords in the near future, maybe 1-2 years.
Yeah.
Where you can click on somebody's Discord and there's an online shop built in that you can buy and have things shipped straight from Discord out of there to you. Yeah. I think that one is really good. If you're not familiar with Discord, I would download it, check it out. It's definitely overwhelming at first. There's a lot going on, but it's very easy to use once you learn it.
Yeah,
just give it a little bit of time. I actually stayed away from it for about a year and a half. I was like, nah, it's not for me. I had it downloaded. We used it to play some video games, so I'd jump in for the chat, and I was just like, no. But now I use Discord every day. Yeah, oh yeah, 100%. Wash has a couple communities on there. I have a couple communities on there, and then we're building out the Pack Fresh podcast community on there. It's really great, and it's really customizable to what you need.
It is.
So we talked about a lot of different platforms.
Yep.
What do you think is going to be dominating in the next 2 to 3 years?
It's hard to say. I think there's a few platforms. I think Whatnot, TikTok Live, eBay Live. I think anything with live auctions and live just selling potential, I think is really going to take over the space. It kind of already is there, but I think even more than it is. I think people are continually getting more comfortable. I think as more people try things out, they stop worrying as much about the scams, because there is a lot of scams out there and people hear about it, and I think that turns them off from a lot of these platforms. But eventually people end up trying it, and then they find places that they're like, oh, this is a very trustworthy place. So I think those types of places are going to just continue to rise in popularity. And I think that's probably the main future. Live entertainment, I've always been a huge believer in. And so a live marketplace that is entertaining is just all of the above.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I think eBay Live, eBay specifically, on both of those, it's the same company, but I know eBay Live, they have a lot of plans for. eBay as a whole has invested a lot of money into the trading card industry in the last 5 years, and they continue to keep doing that, make it a focus to be a place to be able to sell not only TCG cards, but also sports cards and memorabilia and other types of different collectibles, as collecting becomes such a much larger, wider area.
Right.
So I do think eBay is one of the best. It will be for quite some time. I do think there'll be some other companies such as Rare Candy that will add a lot more to their platforms as they continue to develop. I think you'll see Whatnot also add a lot more and continue to develop, and it's all going to be good for the hobby because it gives you as the seller or buyer more options. Check it out, see what kind of fees, see what kind of stuff the sellers are offering. Are you protected buying on this platform? There's a lot of things that you just have to ask yourself what you're looking for, and then find that in your platform that you're buying or selling from. And this is not even including, do you think there's room for more marketplaces in the near future?
Probably.
I think anything's possible with technology in this day and age. So if somebody came up with a new mousetrap and launched it successfully, I definitely think anything's possible.
For sure.
We'll probably see dozens of new online marketplaces in the next few years.
Let me throw
Not
a
very many.
curveball at you.
Okay.
Do you think that there is any opportunity that Pokemon themselves launches their own selling, trading type of platform? And would people actually use it?
Interesting. I would say no. I would say they will not create, because the amount of problems that come with running a platform like that, customers buying from other customers that they can't control that, and
right,
a customer scams another customer, and then Pokemon let that happen. So just as like how big their brand is, I don't think they would ever allow that. I don't think they would ever let that happen. Could they launch their own platform and it would be successful? Absolutely. Everybody loves Pokemon. You could sell not just cards, but anything Pokemon, and they could create a marketplace for that. Probably no problem.
Yeah.
I would
But they
just
want
say,
to sell their own things firsthand.
yeah,
right?
and then they sell out. But Take, for example, on the TCG, the play that they used to have, and you used to be able to open packs, get the cards, and then there was a trading aspect to that. And so you could trade a card for another card, or of course, then people were online selling a bunch of cards that would make a deck, and then you would basically buy it and give them your name and they'd trade you for a base card or something. And there was a bunch of stuff going on there, and they got rid of it and took that back from the buy, sell, trade aspect of it because they didn't want that in the community. It's just, they don't want to be part of that, in my opinion. They don't want to have the negative parts that come with letting people buy, sell, trade with each other, which creates the community because you're buying, selling, trading with other people that are collectors, sellers in the space. But no, I don't think Pokemon would ever launch their own.
Yeah, I think you're probably right.
But then again, Fanatics owns Topps. They want to do everything. They want to run their own card shows. They want to run their own grading company. They want to run their own marketplace. They bought PWCC.
Yeah.
But PWCC is different. Let me say this. Maybe, but it would have to be something like an auction house like PWCC that Fanatics bought. Now they call it Fanatics Collect. You send your cards in. If it's graded, it can run automatically. If it's not graded, it has to be certified that it's authentic, and you pay for that service, and then it's ran in an auction, and then you receive money for that. I could see Pokemon launching something like that where they run the entire process start to finish.
Right.
I don't see ever in the future Pokemon launching a peer-to-peer platform.
It could be a nightmare for them.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, they would not want to do that. They would not want to deal with that. It would be awful for them. And do I think they would even create something where they take in the cards and no.
Yeah.
Why would you do that when you're the largest IP for X amount of years running in a row? Right. Doesn't make any sense. So I think we covered quite a bit, quite a few different marketplaces, covered what you could do depending on if you have lower end cards versus high end cards. If you have any other questions, make sure you leave them down in the video. We'll try and get back to you about it. We're also going to add a section in the Discords, kind of like a question and answer for episodes as well. If any of the episodes ever create questioners for anyone who's listening, make sure you let us know. We'd love to get some feedback and answer some questions if we could, or clarify any information that we say in any of the episodes.
As always, you can find us both on Instagram, on whatnot, TikTok, all those places. And it's been fun as always for next week.
Might have a guest, might not. We'll see.
We're working on a few
guests.
You guys like these types of videos too, or these types of episodes where it's more of a subject base? Let us know, because these are fun. They're different than the interview style, and I feel like they're very informative, which is nice. But
yeah, we got a lot of good feedback on the top 5 mistakes episode. So let us know.
Yeah.
You guys and girls guide the show into what we continue to do. And we have a lot of knowledge stored from all the stuff that we live every day. So yeah, we're happy to share it.
Awesome.
Appreciate everybody for watching.
We'll see you guys in the next one.